Welcome to another episode of the Alignment Podcast. Super excited to have our guest today, Jeff Erickson, here with us. Thanks for coming on the show, Jeff.
Jacob, thanks for having me. This is great.
Yeah, of course. Jeff, so I moved here to Utah 3 years ago from Minnesota. And as I started going to networking events, Jeff became a common face that he was just always smiling and being so nice to everybody. So in my mind, he is one of the pillars of Utah tech networking. Tech networking, say that 5 times fast. Jeff is at Forecastr, building a financial planning and forecasting for founders. And then also for a while has been building out founders and funders, kind of an event series to connect people as they're building companies. So thanks so much for taking the time to come on today. I'm really excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, it's an honor to be able to be on your podcast.
Thanks. Yeah. So to get started, would love to have you give us, kind of the spark notes of where you've been and what you've done, and then what you're most excited about right now too.
Oh, very cool. Well, I grew up in Utah, and so this is where my career has been. I went to University of Utah, ended up working in an investment company here for about 4 years out of my MBA program, and then had one of the partners at the investment company leave and go to this little tech startup. And he took me with him, and that was my introduction to the startup world, and absolutely loved it. So we ended up raising 3 rounds while I was there at this little tech company. And it was from some notable investors. Insight Partners was a big investor, and it was just the coolest thing ever. Loved being part of the startup world. After that, I went off and started a company with some friends of mine. And at the same time, my wife started a company
Cool.
that was really more of a hobby, but it did way better than what I was doing. So eventually I helped her raise some capital, and we ended up running that company for 10 years, sold it to a private equity group. And I was able to take a little break, do a little angel investing, and then wanted to get back in the tech space, the startup tech space, and came across this little company called eShares. Met this guy named Tom Matta, and they were putting a new office together in Salt Lake City, and he brought me on to help with that. They later rebranded to Carta, which if you're in the startup space, you know who Carta is. But I was there for almost 5 years, and that put me right in the middle of the startup ecosystem. Got to know a lot of the VCs from around the country. I was really kind of over partnerships for Carta in between the coasts, which really meant everything not in San Francisco and New York, but absolutely loved being part of Carta. And Carta eventually got to the point where there were about 2,000 employees, didn't feel like a little startup anymore. And that's when I left and went to another little startup called Forecastr that was also serving founders in the startup space. Instead of helping them with their cap table and taking that out of spreadsheets into a software platform, Forecastr is kind of doing the same thing with the financial model, taking it out of spreadsheets into a platform, easy for founders to know their numbers.
That's awesome. As you mentioned, these little startups, I kept expecting you to say, yeah. And I kept thinking of what are big companies in Utah, and that little startup was Instructure or something. But that's awesome. Wow. Yeah. All right. Well, you're more of a legend and a figurehead in the Utah tech scene than I even realized before. And that's crazy. I did not know that Carta used to be eShares. I've known Carta for a couple of years, and obviously didn't know it well enough at all.
Okay, another cool.
So that's awesome.
Cool full circle moment here is about 6 months ago, Tom Matta, who hired me at Carta, he was employee number 17 at Carta. And so he moved to Hawaii, and he's hanging out in Hawaii. Well, we needed somebody to come help me with partnerships. Tom ends up coming on, and we just hired him about 6 months ago at Forecastr. So we're now working back together and in kind of a role reversal where I hired him now, return the favor.
That's awesome. So now Forecastr in a few years is going to be as much of a startup household name as Carta.
That's the plan. Yep.
That's so awesome. That's so cool. So I'm curious. I know we talked a little bit about this before last time we talked. I'm curious, as you think about, startups now versus startups in the past, how has your way of thinking about building teams and hiring the right people
No.
and developing leaders. How has that changed over the years?
Man, I think you learn from mistakes, um, more than anything. And so when we were running the company that my wife and I started called Uppercase Living, we made plenty of mistakes to learn from. So that was super helpful. And I think what I have seen is having a culture at the company matters a ton. And not to say we didn't have a great culture, but if you can set the core values right from the beginning and get people bought in, it makes a huge difference. I'll tell you, Henry Ward at Carta did a great job of that. I mean, when I was there, it was this, you're going to take over the world mentality of, making it so companies never have to go public again. And we're going to be the private marketplace. And everybody's bought into this vision of we're going to go change the world. And those were the type of people that it attracted. And one of the most important things for a startup is to be able to attract the talent and the people that are all in, because startups are hard. And
Yeah.
if you're a founder, you're going to get really frustrated when people aren't working as hard as you sometimes. And that's why you got to have this weird type of person along the side of you for this journey, especially early on, that is all in. And it takes a lot more than money. It's like, I'm in to change the world and I'm passionate about what we're doing. Forecastr has been very similar. The founders have done a fantastic job of setting up core values and then, you know, creating the vision. So
That's awesome. What does that look like on a day-to-day basis at Forecastr? Like, are there how do the core values actually influence?
Oh, okay. So we actually have a weekly stand up, and we'll get to kind of check in, but you see the core values in action. And I mean it's really hard because I mean Forecastr is a remote first company. So headquartered in Louisville, Kentucky. You're not going to build an entire company in Louisville probably. So
Have you been to Louisville?
oh yeah, I've been to Louisville plenty of times, but well, I mean, we've got engineers in Brazil. We've got some CFOs in Toronto, also in London, and we've got talent from all over the world. But what's hard is when you're not all together to see that the
Yeah.
core values in action on a daily basis. So creating opportunities for us to witness, especially the founders, practicing the core values becomes really important, because that's, actions speak louder than words. And so every interaction, you kind of have to make sure you're in alignment with those core values. I mean, just to share a couple of the core values, one is putting people first. And you see this happening at the company. Another is to have fun and to inspire confidence. I mean, all of these things are kind of ingrained, and we'll have like moments as a team when we all get together where, somebody will say, "Hey, what's an example of core values that you've seen this last week or whatever?" And just re-emphasizing those core values for the company becomes really important, especially as you're bringing on new people and you're starting to grow and you're introducing them to this culture that you're creating.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's this idea of like founder magic, right? In like sales. I think it also plays into recruiting and hiring and leading, where it's just contagious to be so closely associated with somebody who's, like gambled everything on an idea of how the world can be better in whatever way that they're building towards it. But as you grow the team and you're further removed from that, especially remote, the intentionality around, hey, here's these values that like come down from what we're trying to do, and how do those live out in the day to day is super important, because you're going to end up with like somebody who's even three or four people removed from a founder or the CEO, who's going to just be like, I'm just here to punch the clock.
Exactly. Yes.
And if you're not intentional about creating that culture, and core values are like one of the easiest ways to focus and be intentional on that, then you end up with that is the culture, right? Where it's like, cool, we just punch the clock.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. And you
talked to
can't
somebody earlier.
have that in a startup for sure.
Yeah, I talked to somebody earlier today, works at a startup, and he's like, "Yeah, our and I won't." But he was like, "Yeah, there's a group of people in our company that just are content with not getting better, and they're happy to just be like, well, it's going to take us 3 months to do this." He's like, "If you really cared, it'd be done next week."
Yeah. Yeah, and there yeah, and in a startup, I mean, you can get away with that in certain jobs and things like that, but
Yeah.
when you're in startup mode, it's all in. That's what actually I loved about when I joined that first startup. It was like everybody was all in. We had stock options that never amounted to anything, but we were like, "This is so cool." And, so anyways, there is a culture that you have to hire for as well. And so one of the things that I've seen Steven and Logan, the founders of Forecastr, do extremely well is being careful on who they let on the team. We go through a process where we actually have different members of the team that will do cultural fit interviews. And so it's
Cool.
part of that, when we're going through and deciding who we want to bring in, it's got to be a culture fit, which I think is really cool. I mean, that's something I've definitely learned from them on how much emphasis they put on the culture of the company.
What do those interviews look like? How do they what's their
Good
process for
question.
determining if somebody's a culture fit?
Well, we've got a couple folks that are really great ambassadors about, the core values. And so, just asking them about, different things that fit our core values. Like, what do you do outside of work? It's like one of our core values is have fun. We want to make sure that people are, engaging and having fun. And there's another core value is live with balance.
Cool.
And that can be interpreted so many ways from different people. So you can't really say there's only one prescription for that. Live with balance might mean that you work from different places at different times, and that's good for me. I mean, whereas somebody else may say, I need to, shut off at a certain time and focus here on different things. Either way, I mean, if you're living with balance and that's what that means to you, we're trying to figure that out. It's like, okay, what does that mean to you as an individual, and would you be a good fit for Forecastr?
Yeah. No, that's cool. How often what's the hit rate on that? How often do people pan out?
Oh man, we've had a very good hit rate. The people at Carta, I mean, or at Forecastr, if you if you talk to the team members, they're like, what's the biggest strength of Forecastr? They will all say the people. It's really fascinating. We get together on an annual basis on a company offsite where we bring the entire
Cool.
company together. And I mean, you really do have amazing people. I've told Stephen and Logan this. I'm like, you guys know how to hire. You attract really good people, but I think there's also some vetting that they're very intentional about as well.
How do you think they attract the best people for the company? Is it just that they embody the values so well, or what is it?
Well, good question. I think part of it is the energy and good vibes that kind of come off of the
Yeah.
founders and the founder group and that. I think part of it is it does kind of snowball to some. There's a bit of a flywheel because the people that you bring on, if they are a good culture fit, they actually love working there as well. And you can just kind of feel it. It's like a
Yeah.
feeling of when people come in, they're like, this is a cool company. I want to be part of it. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that kind of all come together, but those are, a couple key ways. It does start from the top, but then it kind of creates its own snowball effect with everybody that comes on in the
Yeah.
company.
No, that's awesome. So you interact with founders a ton, right? Often people who are building a company for, first, second, third time. What difference do you see it make when somebody is intentional from the start about establishing a culture versus not?
I think it can kind of get away from you if if you're not intentional about it. Um, because I mean, then all of a sudden now you're bringing in people that define the culture for you, right? That's going to
Yeah.
happen regardless of whether you said it or not. But if you don't know, at the beginning, then it's going to be all over the place. But there will be a culture. It's just you're not guiding it anymore. And
Yep.
yeah, so I think it's very important to define it early on in the company. Now, not to say that that's going to be set in stone. I mean, there's certain core values and things that you can kind of embody. The culture is going to change and evolve as people come in and different people bring different pieces, but you're steering it in a direction from the core values that remain. So you're not, you know, you're not kind of just scrambled at some point.
Yeah. It it is very interesting to see. Often, I have seen. I was at a company within United Health Group, so we'd been. I was in an R&D group. We'd done a ton of research on type 2 diabetes. We're like, hey, this works. This thing we've been doing. We're gonna take it and build a real program. I think there were 8 of us that like moved from the 5th floor to the 1st floor into an empty space. We're
Okay.
like, cool. How did we get people on this? And it was like very, kind of scrappy. It was a blast. We got to a certain point as it grew quickly. We're like from 8 to I think we're at 40 people when it really started to boom. And then they brought in a bunch of external people to help. I always tell people, yeah, they brought on all the MBAs and that sounds bad. I learned so much, but it entirely shifted the culture. And it was not aligned with what we had set out to build from the R&D, more scrappy, like, hey, relentless pursuit of truth and value, like low levels of politics, high levels of direct communication. And it just shifted and everything kind of slowed down and the ship started to, steer more slowly. And it was a fascinating experience for me to realize, oh, I was really aligned with this and I loved it and not so much this.
Not so much now.
Like my level of engagement decreased, and that that made me realize, oh, the intentionality about it. Because I don't think anybody was intentional about it.
No.
It's just like, oh well, here's what the business needs. We're going to do this, and on both sides, right? Before and after. And it was just, okay, what happens, happens. And so I do think there is a real power in being intentional because if you aren't, it's hard to know what success is and hard to know when you're hiring who fits this and who's going to help take you to where you want to go.
Yeah. No, that's a great example. And I think you see that is very common, especially when teams merge or come together. You see it all the time in mergers and acquisitions, two
Yeah.
companies coming together. That cultural fit is probably one of the hardest things to make acquisitions actually work. So yeah, it's an interesting dynamic for sure. And it definitely works out better if you can kind of set the stage from the very beginning. And then again, I think there's a lot of it. You have to walk the talk. When you put your core values out there, as soon as you go against one of those core values, you can throw it out the window, right? Because everybody's watching, at least at the top. And so, I mean, you kind of have to call it out when you see things that aren't, aligned with the company's core values. You kind of have to nip it in bud really quick.
Yeah. And it's very obvious to everybody if it's just words on a wall versus actually lived. Yeah.
Yep, for
When
sure.
it is lived, it's magic.
Yep, I agree. It's that's where people want to be. People want to be part of those companies that have that alignment with their core
Yeah.
values. It brings people together. It's like, hey, we're all aligned around this and kind of have the vision together.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thanks, Jeff, so much for your time and for coming on the podcast today. I'm really excited for Forecastr to become a household name, and for the right more than anything, just for the team to keep loving it and being aligned on what they're doing. That's awesome stuff. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that and thanks for being a part of that.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was great. It's fun to chat with Jacob.
Awesome. If people want to follow along on your journey with Forecastr and founders and funders, where's the best place to find you?
Probably LinkedIn. Yeah, just follow me
Okay.
on LinkedIn and that's probably the easiest way.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jeff. It was great chatting.
All right, thank you. See you, Jacob.
See ya.